So Jasper, BioInx, I could make out some of the things that you guys are doing, but I'm sure you have much more information in a very precise manner that you want to share with us in terms of what BioInx does. What are its product offerings?
So with BioInx, we make materials which allow to 3D print cells and tissues. We make materials for 3D bioprinting or biofabrication. And there we have a strong focus on light-based technologies. One of our slogans is from light to life because we use mainly light-based technologies and we develop materials and resins for that, biocompatible resins, which enable to benefit from the high resolution and high reproducibility of light-based printing technologies, which in our opinion is the gateway to the clinics.
Understood. And you did talk about a lot of application area, but what's the most prominent application area for these tissues that you produce?
So on long term, we aim to go to bring this technology closer to the clinics or even bring it into the clinics by focusing on regenerative medicine applications. But this is more the long-term goal, of course. There's still some roadblocks which needs to be tackled there. But in the short term, the technology can already be used for animal-free testing, organ-on-chip applications, drug screening applications, personalized healthcare, where you can do, for example, tests on cells coming from a biopsy from a patient, which can be 3D printed into a functional tissue, which can help to optimize a specific therapy for patients.
So futuristic. So has it already been in use in practical application by clinics?
No, not yet. It's not in the clinics yet, and there's still quite some way going to the clinics. But in terms of, for example, drug screening applications, we are making great progress. We're, for example, involved in a project Astrocardia, where we want to study aging of cells in space in order to test drugs for age-related conditions. So in that project, we are printing together with some other partners. We are printing a micro cardiac model where we are printing micro blood vessels around inside a chip. And then we will send it to the International Space Station because we know from previous missions in space that cells age around 20 times faster in space than on Earth, meaning that 3 weeks in space corresponds to 1 year on Earth. And therefore, you can actually start doing long-term aging experiments.
Makes sense. And again, I mean, that seems like coming right out of a sci-fi. So maybe the question that I want to ask is, if I go back in time from your perspective, when did this idea start? I mean, how did you get the idea of from light to life?
Well, the technology of biofabrication, I think, is now about 20, 25 years old since it was first published in papers. But for BioInx ourselves, so me, I started working on developing materials for light-based biofabrication during my master thesis and my PhD, which I started in 2014. So personally, I've been working on this topic for 10 years now, and the last 2.5 years while being in the spin-off company BioInx.
What I wanted to ask was your motivation. Of course, I understand the background that you just shared,
Mhm.
but what was the motivation in general? I mean,
So
is there a problem statement that you saw which made you think about this?
yeah, so the motivation was actually during my academic career. I'm a chemist, so I had a lot of collaborations with people who are into applications, people who are into more the biology there, and they were using materials which we developed, we being myself and our CSO. And then at the end of our PhDs, we started thinking, what happens if our PhDs finished? We can get very nice proof of concepts, and we had some very nice proof of concepts with some collaborations. But if you ever want to take it to the clinic, and your materials are coming from a research environment, you will never make it into the clinics because, first of all, somebody needs to be able to make new materials.
Mhm.
Secondly, they need to be reproducible. And these are things, typically as a PhD researcher, you only care to a certain extent. You make a new material, it works, you're happy, but you're not going to run stability tests. You're not going to look if you make 10 batches, what's the reproducibility on there? Because maybe a lot of this research is a success of an accidental lucky batch or an accidental unlucky batch, which is
Absolutely.
not reproducible. So we decided, so together with my colleague Aisu, we looked how can we solve this problem, and then we thought, okay, what if we commercialize them? Then we can guarantee the supply of these materials in the long term and make them all as standardized as reproducible as possible to limit any human errors in preparing the materials, mixing the materials, different batches. And that's actually how we started with the idea of BioInx. We then raised some funds to further elaborate on this idea. And once we thought it was ready for commercialization, we launched a company, basically.
Understood. Understood. And if I ask you, I mean, this does have applications that may demand regulatory approvals also. Have you been through that process already? Are you in talks? What's the status on that part?
So we are in the process of getting these regulatory compliant materials. So in that respect, for example, recently together with Rousselot, one of the biggest gelatin producers in the world, we've launched our XPure based Gelma ink. So it's a gelatin based ink, which is based on a GMP quality gelatin, so endotoxin free medical grade material. And for us, this is our first step into going outside of this research use only, but into GMP compliant materials. So we are actively working on that, and we are planning to elaborate our portfolio in that sense with new ready to use formulations starting from this GMP compliant materials.
Understood. Understood. And if I talk about one of the applications that you mentioned erstwhile, and that was related to maybe drug testing, screening, those type of applications, typically who would be your end customers? Why would they want to use this? Can you share that with us?
Yeah, so our end customers there would be the pharmaceutical companies who are looking for alternatives to animal testing, not only out of animal cruelty, but also out of efficiency. Because if you can test your materials directly on human tissue, 3D printed
Yeah,
human
I think
tissue, you don't have any interspecies differences. It's also a lot easier to follow it up. Which means that drug development can go a lot faster, or target screening can go a lot faster at a lot lower cost. So in that sense, pharmaceutical companies would be our main users.
And does it mean that we are going to see a revolution in terms of clinical trial studies and its pace of approval?
I hope so. I mean, there's always with new technologies. There's also new possibilities, and I really hope that technology of biofabrication can induce a paradigm shift out of the conventional animal trials, phase one, phase two, phase three, because if we could speed up drug development, I mean, everybody would benefit from that significantly. And that's one of the dreams we have, that we could make a difference there as well.
I think I wanted to revisit your scale on which you have already worked. So you have spent time in the last 10 years in perfecting this and then taking it to a step where you have something that is being commercialized at this point of time. There are so many applications, there are future potentials that are already there. But maybe if you look back in time and if you try to understand which were those technical factors that took the most time to perfect before you were at a stage where you could think about commercialization or potential applications like sending it to International Space Station studies.
Could you repeat the question? What?
So maybe a direct way to put that question would be, which were those pivotal points in terms of technical development, in terms of BioInx and its material, that actually accelerated your path towards commercialization? What were the two most challenging problems that actually came in terms of tech?
Well, one thing which has been very important for us, apart from the material aspect, we develop inks. We sell inks, so materials for 3D printing, and you cannot print an ink without a printer.
Yeah.
So from that perspective, there have been tremendous revolutions in the light-based printing technology. If you, for example, look at multiphoton lithography or two-photon polymerization, so probably the most spectacular 3D printing technology in the world. You can print with extreme high resolution, but in the past you had extreme high resolution at the cost of very long printing times. And we could only print microscopically small structures, and it would take a very long time. But if you see the progress made in the field by companies such as Nano or Nanoscribe in accelerating this printing technology. I mean, in the past, it took 20 minutes to print a structure of 200 microns, so a fifth of a millimeter. Now you can print structures of 2 centimeters in that time frame with still this micrometer resolution. So
Wow.
that was one thing which is very important. I mean, having an ink and a printer, it's a bit of a chicken and the egg story.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you have to rely on both sides. And then another technology, a spectacular technology developed by Readly 3D, is this volumetric printing or tomographic printing, which still to me looks like science fiction actually, because you put your resin, your ink in there with your cells and you start printing, and 20 seconds later you have your structure
Oh.
independent of how big it is. And technologies like that not only result in extreme high cell viabilities, but they also open up the door of having a bioprinter in the operating theater. Because imagine that you could go into the clinic for, let's say, damaged cartilage, and a surgeon, you would go into the operating theater, a surgeon harvests cells from you, puts them in a 3D printer, your new printed cartilage is printed within 1 minute, and you can
Mhm.
directly implant it again. I mean, I think a technology like this opens up the possibility that this will ever be possible. So for us,
Yeah.
apart from having this performing materials which have some unique features, this has been very important. And then another pivotal point for us also, where we started to think about creating a business, was when the first time we developed a resin enabling printing of living cells with two photon polymerization, because we were the first who ever launched a commercial product which enables printing of living cells with two photon polarization. So finally you could mimic the complicated architecture of living tissues, which is impossible with many other printing technologies. So for us, that was
Absolutely.
also very important.
And I think it's not that people will not appreciate this. It's simply very difficult to imagine this, that we are able to do this with the existing technology that we have. And I think, it's landmark when you say so, that we are able to do that complex level of printing at this point of time. I did not hear about this. All I have heard about is biocompatible materials can be used to make implants, which are having profiles that degrade over time, so on and so forth. But the complexity that we are talking about, it's at a very different scale. And then, of course, that opens a lot of doors, as you were talking about. But let me also ask you, so your startup, BioInx, is rooted in academic research. And then, as you rightly said, ultimately, the journey from academic research to a commercialized product, you do need a lot of fundings. Now, how did you secure the funding? How difficult it was for you? Was it the government institutes and agencies that were much more friendlier in terms of funding opportunities as compared to private VCs?
Um, Well, from our perspective, maybe we are lucky to be in Belgium, where government really focuses on having this know-how economy. So we had the benefit at first at university. Still, we could apply for grants leading towards spin-off creation. So we were supported there both by university grants and by Flemish government grants to prepare everything to bridge the gap between a academic proof of concept and a first viable business model or commercializable product. So that was been very important for us, and also helped us to convince investors to invest into the company. So that has been very important. And apart from that, because we had this pre-trajectory, we could already start commercializing some of our materials quite early on, which means we could also generate revenues, which then again aid in consolidating other public funding projects, such as government projects or research projects. And that has been very helpful for us. But of course, as in other tech startups, we are constantly looking in more capital and raising more capital for us to grow and to scale at the right pace, because of course you don't want to be left behind in a fast-growing market due to funding insufficiency. So for us, it's constantly on the radar. But we're very happy that we can benefit from a combination of private equity, public funding, and of course our customers, which not only generate revenues but also prove the viability of our products and the performance of our
Absolutely.
products.
Absolutely. I don't think there is any better proof than products being bought up by customers for any VCs. I think that clearly gives an indication that there is a proof of concept and there is a proof of scalability as well as an interest from the market. So I think, having been able to achieve that, things in terms of investment will become much, much easier, is what I assume going forward. If I also talk about IP, because a lot of technology that you have been talking about, it's very unique in terms of its properties, in terms of its applications, in terms of its complexity also. And as you mentioned, there are so many applications that you can explore yourself, but there are many unthought of applications that will be there, the technology that you have. So what is your IP strategy in terms of filing of patents, in terms of licensing, so on and so forth?
Well, first of all, our technology is highly IP based. So we have some patents, some technology we developed in the past on which we could build the company. And of course, with all new developments and all new strategies, first aim is always to look, can we secure some additional IP? So in that respect, we're currently in the process of filing additional IP for a new portfolio expansion. But this is of course always on our radar with every new development. Like how can we protect this as good as possible? And up until now, I believe we've been able to manage that pretty well with some more IP coming. So this is always a main priority for us to further build on our existing IP and elaborate our patent portfolio in that sense.
Understood. Understood. And I mean, since this came out of PhD research, is the IP in collaboration with the university? Do they also have rights on this?
Yeah. So our basis IP where we founded the company on is indeed IP which was developed at university by my colleague Aisu and myself and professor in the research group. And there we have an exclusive license with university, meaning that we can build further on this IP. But of course, ever since incorporation, we've been filing new IP as well to further build upon this strong position.
Understood. Understood. And there was a second part to that question, and that was in terms of licensing or in terms of collaboration. Now, there'll be a lot of medical devices company that would feel privileged by having this technology in their portfolio, right? Because they would have the scale, they would have the investment, and they would also have the motivation in terms of PR as well as in terms of commercial aspects. Collaborate with you to license your IP, or in general to accelerate your research through investment. Have there been any conversations or interests like that from large medical devices company? Are those conversations a part of things that are in your vision going forward?
Well, actually, we apart from our standard portfolio, like our ready-to-use inks, we're also often engaging with companies into custom developments of materials tailored to their needs. And in that framework, we have some collaborations with big companies for which we are developing new technologies. So indeed, and the nice thing or the fun thing from our end is that these are very applied research. So these are typically companies with a clear goal and a clear end application in mind, and then we are very happy that we can collaborate or develop products tailored to their needs based on our know-how and our IP to advance the field and to actually bring this technology closer to the end applications.
Understood. I'm just trying to imagine the model of collaboration. I mean, is it like service or a consulting that you guys are providing, or is it service and manufacturing at a lab scale that you guys are providing, which they will take it forward?
It depends a bit on the needs of our customer. We have agreements where we are indeed developing new products with the aim of also producing them afterwards and supplying them. But it depends a bit also on the size of the project or the application. If it's just fine tuning a formulation or it's really working towards an in-depth application, it can make a big difference. We've also had collaborations where we are starting from a company's material, make it into a reproducible printable ink, which we would then commercialize afterwards together with them.
Got it. Got it. So if I were to ask you, Jasper, if funding was not an issue or funding was something that was in plenty, what would be the next steps or what would be the vision that you plan to implement going forward? Somebody who's leading this.
Well, yeah, for us, the next strategy is securing additional funding, which allows us to further scale the technology to go from startup into scale up modes with the company. We've already added some more experienced profiles to our team, which help us in that sense to bring the technology into the next level. So taking it out of research and bringing it into the real world applications.
Got it. Got it. And since you mentioned about additions to your team, I mean, there is one member who has been with you since the beginning, I suppose. So how has that journey been? I mean, have there been differences in the past in terms of how to take the company forward, or which technical aspects to develop first, or where the application should be there in terms of first commercialization? And how did you guys sort it out or discuss it out?
Yeah, so at the beginning, I think with a lot of spin-offs or technological startups, at the very beginning, we were maybe thinking too much as a scientist. So we thought if we develop a material which is reproducible and can be printed really well, and you can use it for a lot of applications, then people will buy it and will start using it. And also in our documentation, we were focused very much on the scientific performance of the materials. And then we figured out over time that you cannot have a one size fits all product. It's important to focus on specific applications, specific tissues, and make the best ink in the world for those tissues rather than to focus on an ink and expecting our customers to come up with the right applications for there. So that has been for us a big difference to start focusing more and going into niches and also selecting the different opportunities and sifting through them. For example, what collaborating partners we will work with, what distributors we will work with, what technologies do we want to focus on, which printing technologies, what materials are we going to work on. That has been, because at the beginning we're still very enthusiastic, but at the beginning you're an enthusiastic scientist and you want to do everything. And as a typical startup mentality, I think you always think we can do everything. But at certain points you run into time issues, specifically the time issues, because in the end you're a small team and you would want to do everything. But of course, there's only 24 hours in a day, and you need to be able to do that. So then you need to make some strategic decisions on what focus you need to go to. And in that sense, I must say we have a great team. Everybody's very involved there and very open to what direction we should go into. So that helps a lot to have a strong team to discuss and to argument why we should go in certain directions or why not, and to listen what their feedback is. And in that sense, for us, it has also been crucial to have an advisory board with some people, experienced people in the field, to help us take the right decisions on next technological developments.
I think then, I mean, you have the formula for success already. I think it's 90% it's the team culture that actually creates or fosters a positive environment for taking the technology forward. I think one of the questions that I typically ask and have got very interesting answers to is, take your technology to some customer and they give you a new application because they see so much application or potential in the technology. I mean, which you may be thinking from a different perspective. I mean, have there been such aha moments for you where you're collaborating with somebody and then they give you another application area which you may have not thought about?
Actually, we have. I mean, recently we submitted a project together with a customer on a completely different application. I cannot disclose which one it is yet, but sometimes indeed it's getting these external opinions in, and people who can look at it from a bit more of a distance, or who see different opportunities than yourself. And then with certain printing technologies and certain materials, and you think like it makes so much sense to go into this application. So yeah, we've had it recently with a customer exactly who says like, I want to use your materials for this application. Are you interested? And then often we make the decision internally: should we go for it? Should we not? But in this case, it made so much sense to do it that we decided to expand our focus with one more focused issue, basically.
Understood. I mean, typically, that's one of the indications that your technology has a lot of potential, since others can see that. I mean, that has been my experience talking to people who have had such significant technologies on their hands. If other people are able to see applications, not just of your technology, but also of your know-how. I mean, things that built up this technology. I mean, knowledge that built up this technology. So typically, I mean, they also provide consulting, they provide collaborative developments of new applications, so on and so forth. So, I mean, that's good to hear. Thank you for sharing that, Jasper. I think those were the questions that came to my mind. I think it's a fascinating technology. The day I'm waiting for is when it will be very, very apparent to common people also, because now it's hidden behind technology, hidden behind clinical trial stages, which common people cannot see. I mean, if they would, I mean, they would believe that it is sci-fi still, having been able to achieve something like this. But great talking to you, Jasper. Thank you very much for your time. Fun talking to you.
Thank you. Likewise.